The first time I heard about these women were in an article about Black Panther, where they were talking about how the Dora Milaje were based on real women, which I thought was fascinating. But then it wasn't until I got the script by Dana Stevens that I really started to understand who these women were. And of course, reading the script, was so enamored by them. And then it was coming on board and then doing an incredible deep dive into the research. And it's a phenomenal true story.
Yeah, it's insane. Dana, is this something you'd known about for some time?
No, I didn't. I similarly heard about it from Black Panther, but I heard also about it through Maria Bello, who shares a story credit on the movie. She had been in West Africa, and she came back and came to Viola and said, we've got to make a movie out of this. And when I started looking at the research that had been sort of gathered so far, I was just blown away like you were. How can we have never heard of this? There are so many stories out there in other cultures, and we are so focused on ourselves all the time. And this was a story about women who not only were fighting wars and fighting men and winning, but they also had political power in this culture. They were in those council rooms talking about, the direction of their people. And I just really wanted to write about them. Also, just looking at the drawings of them and this culture that we had never seen before on film, I was very excited to write about women who had this kind of strength and autonomy.
Where did you even begin to learn about them? Because I know, the thing to do is go to Wikipedia, and I'm guessing that's not going to be a great resource for this.
Yeah, well, I would even go on YouTube and look for just anything. Like I watched French videos that were about them, just to try, and I couldn't always understand what they were saying, but just to find the imagery. And also, I started to look for books on the side. Like I was interested in the slave port of Ouida, and I found a book just about Ouida, and then it would mention the Agoge or mention the Oyo Empire, and that's where I found out about this battle where the Oyo, who had sort of had their foot on the neck of the Dahomey for 70 years, they were defeated by the Agoge. So I thought, okay, well, there's a great battle that we can depict, and I wanted the Agoge to be victorious. So I really looked for any side connection that I could find. And another big thing that we all felt is when you're reading the eyewitness accounts of the Agoge, you're reading primarily white men who have an agenda to enslave people, or whatever their time period agenda might be. You have to step aside and go, that is one point of view, and think about who these women really were. That was, in the end, what I wanted to do. I wanted it to be from their point of view, from Nawi and Niska's point of view, and what it felt like day to day to live in this palace and to train to be a warrior.
There is so much happening here, and there's these incredible dramatic scenes. Then there's these massive, awesome action sequences. Like this is a superhero movie on so many levels. But it does make me curious about the editing, because you're pulling off this balancing act between the drama and the action. How do you find that? Is that was there one one scene that you struggled with the most, like just nailing the tone, or was the whole thing kind of like a constant back and forth?
I would say that the entire film was its own challenging journey, but it was also in some ways editor joy, because I got to stretch so many muscles. And when I read this script, I just fell in love with it so much, and the characters and the journey that they take. And Gina and I talked a lot about the character journey, and not just in those intimate moments, which were really important to land, so you, the audience, could imprint on these people and care about them, but carrying the character journey through the fights themselves. The big pieces, the Oyo battle, which is like 8 minutes of just pure battle. And so for me, it was always keeping those bones, keeping the structure of the the characters through whatever we were going through. I think for me the hardest one, because I knew in a sense the audience would, it takes sometimes a moment to know, for them to settle in and to kind of have that transition from we're sitting down to watch maybe Viola or an actor, to where she becomes Naniska for them, where she imprints on them. And I saw in many ways starting the film and kind of starting that whole initial rise out of the grass and that initial battle, because it was really important to sell and that these women were formidable and they were fierce and that they worked together, but they had their own. You began to kind of get a sense of who they were even from the moment they come out of the grass, mm-hmm. right? And so that was really challenging, but not because these women, these actors trained so intensely. So for me as an editor, it was wonderful to be able to show that, to show their skill. But at the same time, it was the first battle. So it was really important that, people believed that these women, were as fierce and formidable as they were.
And you and Gina have been working together since Love and Basketball, I believe. So you must have a nice shorthand at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in many ways it was similar. I mean, with Love and Basketball, you needed to believe that Sanaa was a b-ball. And with this one, you had to believe that, Viola and, and Naniska and Amenza and Zogi were fierce. So yeah, I mean, I think the shorthand, it's really a trust. I think we're at a point where, I know what she's looking for. We have lots of conversations, during pre-production, and I think during production, because Gina has so much going on. I mean, this film, as someone who's also in the editing room, but also witnesses the journey of every one of these people, her responsibility on this film was unbelievable, and it was a difficult shoot. And so I feel like my responsibility was just to keep her informed, keep up with them in terms of what they were doing, what they were about to do, if there was something I could help, provide whatever information they needed based on what I was seeing in the cut as she continued to shoot, and just tell them to keep going, because what they were doing was pretty incredible.
Terence, I heard that this is your 80th film as composer.
I don't know.
Luckily,
they have
they have people who keep track of those things. What did draw you specifically to this project?
Oh, well, first of all, it was Gina. It's, I worked with her on Love and Basketball, and I've seen the trajectory of her career just grow exponentially with each project. And then we did a TV show together called Shots Fired. So when she called me to do this, I was excited about it because, I just love her work. And then she sent me the script. And then when you read the script, it's like, come on, I got to be a part of this. A black female king in Africa, are you kidding? Because I think the thing that I love about making movies is that I've been blessed enough to work on projects that are pertinent to the times that we're living in, And this movie is so important for so many reasons, And I told Gina this, and I'll keep saying it whenever somebody asks me a question. But she made the movie that I've finally been waiting to see for a long time. I've been waiting to see our culture shot and put on the big screen in such a way that was elegant, respectful, and beautiful. And when you look at all of these performances, of all of these brilliant actors and actresses, for me, it was just a blessing to be a part of it.
And the score is so gorgeous. How did you sort of combine that classical, orchestral, epicness while being so steeped in West African culture and instrumentation?
Well, it's one of those things where you try to find a balance, I remember when I first saw the movie, I was like, oh shit, don't screw this up. You know what I mean? Because everything was so beautiful. But I think for me, one of the things that I've always tried to do as a composer, because in studying like people like Stravinsky and other great composers, one of the things that they've always done is take folklore and expound on it, right? And that's one of the things my teachers always talk to me about as a jazz musician who writes for orchestra. So I wanted to do the same thing with this film, is to take our culture, right, and use it within the orchestra, but expand on it and expound on it to make it bigger and broader, but at the same time, universal. So I needed to find some type of melodic theme that could fit the bill. And man, I was listening to some Ladysmith Black Mambaza because I really love their music. And the way they use clustered harmony that moves diatonically through certain harmonic progressions was the way that I started. And I literally started at the piano with the ba-da-da-dee-da, but I used a cluster type of harmony, and that just set the tone for the entire thing. And once I came up with the entire melody, man, you sit in your room by yourself and you think it's great until you got to play it for somebody. So I sent it to Gina, man, and I was a little nervous, and Gina and Terry listened to it, and they gave me the thumbs up. And once they did that, man, and then it was just full steam ahead. And I remember when I got the film, the first scene that I worked on was the Gogia coming back to the kingdom after the battle. Because there's something about that scene to me that's just majestic, heroic, and just beautiful about these women who just been through this fierce battle, and they're coming back to the kingdom that they're protecting, and the people are so appreciative and so respectful of what it is that they've been doing. That needed to be the moment to set the tone for me for the rest of the film musically.
You mean when they come back at the end?
No,
in the beginning. Oh, okay.
Yeah, at the beginning. After the first battle, when the little boy is trying to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Tony and Becky, I'm so curious about trying to recreate the sounds of 1820s Dahomey, especially when you're shooting in what was probably a modern day city where you're probably got traffic and helicopters among so many other things. You don't really have access to, video of 1820. How did you sort of know what it should sound like?
Well, I just I did a lot of research and just listening for the sounds of Africa and listening for the sounds of the correct birds and the correct winds and doing research on wildlife and making sure, Gina talked about having the sounds of animals. We don't see a lot of them, but they are there. And so when we go through the jungle, we go through different parts, we're hearing animals. And I was just looking to make a soundscape of Africa that was beautiful, and the winds and the bugs and the birds, and it was all so beautiful. But then we have the brutality of the battles, and so that was awesome. I love doing those, and the sounds of the machetes, and and Naui, when she says, a rope is not a weapon, and yet later on, it's a pretty cool weapon. And we have just a beautiful sound of that. That's so awesome. I love the sound of that rope. And so it's building that sonic landscape of Africa and bringing all those pieces to the table of just the beauty and the brutality. So then I bring all the pieces to the table, and then Tony's at the table, and then he takes.
Yeah, and then we take all those tracks and we put them in the space that you're in today, and we have a blast with it. The thing in terms of the mix that we were really focused on was to make it feel effortless. Take all those elements, make it feel effortless, make it feel organic. Really transport you into this world where we have these fierce warriors and these intense battles, and just have that intensity match what Gina captured on screen. And then also with Terence's music, make sure that we're playing nice with Terence's music, that we're not stepping on anything, and just bringing it all together. So we had an amazing time.
Was there a scene or a moment that was the most challenging for either of you? both of you?
Yes.
Emphatically, yes.
Yes. There's a scene called the battle dance,
Oh, yes.
which was our Achilles heel through the whole thing. And in the beginning, Gina was like, "We got to get the battle dance. Let's get that right." And I'm like, "We will. Just give us a little time." It took a lot of time to get it because the warriors have,
Oh, sorry. Can you talk into the mic?
Sorry, more of a rubber machete, right? And they're hitting their chests and they're doing their dance, and that's a rubber sound hitting the chest where there's usually a mic. And so there was some challenges in that, and trying to remove the sound of the impact without hurting the voices of the actors. And I love that scene now. It's my favorite piece because we go through that battle dance and you can hear the grit of their feet, and it just sounds so great, and the music and everything just goes, and we go from the battle dance and into the Nanisca's big speech and then to the big battle. And that was really challenging, just to get the music and the sound effects and everything through that to work correctly together, and it does, and it's pretty cool.
Every piece of the puzzle is there.
Yeah.
Dialogue, music, sound effects, and we all had to just gel together, and we finally got it.
Here I was worried about helicopters overhead. I didn't even think about the actors themselves.
I couldn't use real machetes for that part.
Gersha, can you talk about your research process for the film? Because there's so many specific details that are fascinating, from the shells to the tribal markings to even the colors of each tribe.
Yes, I think the research was definitely a challenge. I think we've already alluded to it before. Dana had alluded to it already. For us, I think Akin was really helpful for us in terms of, aiding us with that, because he always fed us everything he was doing, because he started before us and had done quite a bit of research. So I think we started with the book, 2 Missions to Gazo, or something like that. It was like an amalgamation of essays that had been written by, I think he was a captain of
missionary.
a ship. A missionary. Oh, a missionary. And then we had the book, Amazons of Black Sparta, which was really helpful, and that had a lot of really good descriptions of the uniforms and so on. So, it was just weeding through all of these different things to find descriptions and things that we could use. And then there's some illustrations that are out there. The palace tunic that's it's red, white, and blue. And then the colors that we ended up using came basically from the idea. One of the things that was really important to me in the research was the indigo, and making sure that we had indigo in our costumes. It was in our script. We had the baths in the scene that Naui sees when she first walks into the palace. And so I really wanted to use indigo, so that was a big thing. And I had started with a skirt that had a border print, and I remember, Gina had thought that it wasn't African enough. We actually thought we had aced it, and this is what we were doing. We had put together it on a mannequin and, had the burgundy tops and so on, and the skirt. And then she looked at it, and the next day she came in and she said, "Oh, I don't think it's African enough." So I had some other stuff that I showed her, other fabrics that we had found from other suppliers, and ended up on this skirt fabric, which is a drum print, and it's made by an artist from Gambia. His name is Musa, and he works by himself with his son in his yard, and made all the skirts for us. And we would get them like in these little packages coming to us, week by week, and somehow we managed to put it all together. So I think one of the things for me when I look at the film is that I noticed that in the beginning we didn't do as much breakdown, because we didn't have enough fabric for the skirts. So, you know what I mean? We started, we were able to amass what we needed later on, but in the beginning we were really tight. So that went on past research, but anyway, that's just a little bit of information.
How many people were you dressing for? I can't even imagine.
I don't remember the exact number, but I do remember for us the thing was we had to be clean and dirty because of what we were shooting. And so we had probably was it 40 warriors maybe in the beginning? And, so we did like one of the very first scenes is the rising out of the grass. So they're kind of clean then, they've traveled. And then, we just went on, and mostly it was about the clean, dirty thing for us, that we just had to have so much stock to keep it all going. So
And also, I assume these costumes have to be very practical because they're doing incredible stunts in them.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was another one of our challenges for sure, making sure that, everything stayed on the bodies when they were fighting, etc. Because Gina did have some talks with us about things that were flying off, when they went to fight, like their pieces would drop off. Just, it was a very fast and crazy experience, the Bonamazzi. When I designed T-shirts, made T-shirts for my crew, and one of the things that's written on them is that we survived Bonamazzi, because it was literally I know we felt like the warriors when we were finished, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Akin, where did you even begin in creating this world? Because I have heard this several times. Gina said she really wanted to be a 360-degree atmosphere for the actors to play in and immerse themselves, which sounds great, but also really hard for you.
I mean, it was a beautiful privilege and a challenge. But more exciting to me is the task of honoring human beings and looking into a past that we do not get to see often enough. And I remember when I was in Benin, this woman, Daya, in her 20s, was my interpreter. She spoke 10 languages. They speak 44 languages in Benin. Dahomey is in modern-day Benin. And she was saying, I wish we had skyscrapers. And I said, but you don't have any fucking people. What are you going to put in the skyscraper? She feels like that is a depiction of success, and it's not. And what we did with this film is we gave you a depiction of something that is beautiful, that is not that. And that is the thing we never see. So you can sleep on the floor with pride. And you can carry things on your head with pride, because that's better than on your spine. That's better for you. Sleeping on the floor is better for your back than sleeping in a soft bed. All these things, I never in all of my travels saw a crying baby swaddled to their mother. There are things that we have forgotten that we need to remember. And so when Gina allowed us the privilege of looking into that truth and giving it back, not just to you, but to allow people in Africa to be like, I come from that village still, and it's beautiful. God bless. Or let the gods bless. So that's what it was for me, is that every little piece of the things that we built needed to be in love with that. And us as creators needed to sit back, look, listen, and learn, because that is beautiful.
And again, I'm just so curious, because you had to create all these different sets and these worlds. What was your biggest challenge?
I think it is, there is a burden in feeling passionate about honoring and feeling super aware and self-conscious that these are real, this tradition continues to exist, and that when I step foot into these spaces, I want to be able to feel as if I did right by them. Mm-hmm. So then it's looking at every aspect and every detail and saying, what is the magic discovery of those pieces? Like if we're looming, how did they loom? If we're blacksmithing, how did they blacksmith? If we're walking and moving and talking and all of those things, how does that affect the worlds that they're in? So everything has purpose too. So we don't want to put any adornment up that doesn't have purpose, because that is cultural appropriation. When you strip it of its purpose, that is some music video where someone's dressed up like a Native American, all that stuff has purpose. Every bead is sewn on for purpose. So we need to understand that purpose or not utilize it. So that was the beauty, is everything was a discovery of purpose for me. So I'd be like, oh man, look at that. Like the termite mounds, you'd put the hay on the termite mound, so the termites come out, they eat the hay, and the excretions help waterproof when you mix that hay with mud and create your earthen houses. And so some genius sat and looked at those termite mounds and was like, it rains and they never break down. I need to figure out what that is and incorporate it into the walls of my structures. There are discoveries like that with every little detail that we created, and what a privilege to discover that. History is beautiful. Mm-hmm. History is beautiful when you're paying attention.
Again, everything in the movie looks and sounds so terrific. I do want to talk about this amazing cast. I know Viola was involved as producer and star, but your whole ensemble is just fantastic. Some actors, we've seen before, but maybe in ways that we haven't seen before. And then you have, this is Tuso's first movie, which I can't even believe. How did you really round out the entire ensemble?
Yeah, this group was incredible group of artists. In casting, I knew I needed to find the warriors that could stand behind and beside Viola Davis. You got to be able to go toe-to-toe with Viola Davis. And also I needed to believe you as a warrior and believe you in this time, and that was important too. I needed to know that you had the work ethic to go through the training that they were going to have to go through, knowing that they were going to do their own fighting and stunts. And so I cast by my gut, and it was really beautiful to read the script and know immediately I wanted Lashana Lynch as Azogi, like there was nobody else. And I wanted John Boyega as the king. And that was both, I didn't know either of them. I was just fans of their work and fans of who they were as people, just based on this video that John had put out that went viral during the protests. And Lashana, a speech that she gave at an award show that I was at, I just was so enamored by who she was, what she wanted to put in the world, what kind of work. So, and then I needed to find Nawi, and how could I find a young woman who really needed to go toe-to-toe with Viola? And Tuso showed up in an audition on my Zoom screen. We were, at that point, obviously COVID was affecting everything, and so it was just this face that popped up. And she didn't even open her mouth yet, and I fell in love with her, that face, those eyes. And then she started reading, and her chops are just insane. And she was doing things that no other actor was doing, and I felt everything, and that was really exciting. I then had her meet with Viola, and they just talked for about 45 minutes, and when they were finished, Viola told me, I've never met her before, but I feel maternal towards her.
Wow.
And then the last part that Tuso had to do is that she was honest, which people aren't often, about when you say, do you have any athletic ability? Did you do any sports growing up? And she, honestly said no, which was scary for me.
Sure.
So I decided to have a stunt assessment with her and Danny Hernandez, our incredible fight and stunt coordinator. Took her to a gym, and it was supposed to be an hour of just going through, put a machete in her hand, and just give her combinations. And that hour turned to 2 because she just wanted to keep learning. She kept wanting to get better. She was, you could see this kind of obsessive thing with her. And that just enamored us with her, and we knew that attitude was what we needed for her. And then lastly, Sheila Tim, who plays Amenza, incredible. And this is a beautiful thing because Terry was cutting Halle Berry's directorial debut, Bruised. And Terry's the one that said, I found your Amenza. And so they invited me to see an early screening of the film. And I loved the film, but literally when it finished, I was like, who is that? And it was Sheila who was playing this incredible character, and it was absolutely, she's our Amenza. So it was a beautiful thing to put this group together, and they bonded so quickly because they were training to get together and doing this intense months-long training. That was the hardest thing that any of them had ever done. But what it did is it bonded them because they were competitive with each other in the best way. But they also pushed each other, helped each other, lifted each other through all of that. And I knew that's what it would do. I felt the best way I could build a true sisterhood amongst them.
What was John doing while they were doing all that training?
John was watching and applauding and cheering them on, and walking around in his robes. He loved. He truly loved the robes.
I would, I'm guessing some of these people maybe kept their costumes. I would try to.
No, they kept their weapons. Everybody wanted their weapons.
That's so cool. Well, again, it is such a beautiful movie. I want to thank you all so much for being here. I want to thank you for being a great audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.